Welcome to episode 3 of the Cash Flow Joe podcast presented by Pips Path. I'm Pip Stellick, joined by my business partners, Steve Hipple and Bradley Streck. Steve, how you doing today?
Hey, everybody.
Awesome. Bradley, how you doing?
Better than you, buddy.
That doesn't take much to be better than me. We are here to help beginning investors with their first transaction and seasoned investors make more money. Our company trains and mentors thousands of students all over the world to become real estate investors. For more information, visit our website, pipspath.com, where we have tons of resources, tons of free stuff there for you to get started now, including your personal scorecard. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about the big question: what if I don't have any money? How can I get into property? And on the last episode, we started talking a little bit about OPM. OPM stands for Other People's Money. It comes in lots of different shapes and sizes, and I'm guessing most of you probably have access to more OPM than you even imagined, because I don't think we look outside the box very often. And so we're going to talk about OPM in different ways. And so, Steve, one of the ways we talk about OPM is joint venture partners. I know in your business, you've done a lot of stuff with what we call JV partners or joint venture partners. Could you expand on that a little bit and how that kind of works?
Definitely. JV, I'll just say JVs. People call them JV, JVPs, joint venture partners. It's all the same thing. I'll just say JVs. Keep it simple that way. There's such a benefit to your business, how you can continue to grow your business and continue doing it. Because, well, why do we need JV partners? Well, some of you guys right now listening say, I've got no money. How do I do property? How do I get started on my very first property? And that's what it's all about. If you've got no money, how do you do that? Well, joint venture partners can contribute money to your deal, either all the money, part of the money, whatever you need to get your deal done. Some people listening to this right now maybe say, I've got money, but I don't have credit. Some people say, I don't have money or credit. Joint venture partners can bring money. They can bring credit. They can bring money and credit to the deal, whatever you need. So you can kind of customize your joint ventures or JVs to what you need. They can bring money. And in my business, I haven't bring all the money. I haven't bring the 20% down payment or whatever down payment money is needed. I haven't bring the closing costs. And so for me, I find the deal, I put the deal together and have my joint venture partner, they fund the deal. I've also had them provide the credit for the deal where they actually, they go on title, they buy the home, they get the mortgage. And so with that, when they bring the money and they bring the credit and they buy the home, at that, well, what have I done? I put the deal together. I'm putting the deal together. I'm the person, I'm the glue doing all the work, putting this deal together and making sure it's a good deal. So with that, if you're not bringing the money to the deal, if you're not bringing the credit, you're not buying the property, you know, how many deals can you do? You can do unlimited deals because everybody is limited by capital. Doesn't matter who you are. If you've got $100,000 in your bank account or you've got $1 million in your bank account, say I'm going to buy property. Well, how many properties can you buy with $1 million? Eventually, you'll run out of capital. If you're also going to run out of credit because banks eventually will cap you on mortgages. Whether you get 4 mortgages, 10 mortgages, 20 mortgages, eventually the banks view you as being too risky. So joint venture partners can help you bring money to your deal. They can help you bring credit to your deal. Any combination of those, you can continue growing because so many investors, even myself, when I first started, I said, well, the challenge is the money. Well, the challenge is not the money. If you've got a good deal showing good cash flow on a good property that's well managed, the capital is not the challenge, right? The deal is the most important thing. So we want to make sure we're getting people into the right deal, like the joint venture partners. So with JVs, there's no limit to the deals you can do with other people's money. With that, people always say, well, where do you find these JVs? Where do you find these people who have the capital that want to fund your deals? Well, as a real estate investor, you always want to be talking to people, letting them know you're doing property.
Yeah, I call that TTP. Talk to people. Yeah,
TTP.
it's a very, very amazing acronym, TTP.
That's a new one. Like
Yeah.
when Bradley was a pharmacist, Bradley, when you started meeting people in the pharmacy, of course you're a pharmacist, but you go to real estate networking meetings now, didn't you? Now, if Bradley only told him he's a pharmacist, well, why are you here? But I say, well, I'm a pharmacist, but I also do real estate investing. Or I say I'm a pharmacist, but my passion is actually about real estate investing. I'm a newer real estate investor in the area. So you got to let people know you're doing property. And over time, people will get to know you as you're doing property. You've done 1 deal, 2 deals, maybe 0 deals. Say I'm a newer property investor. I'm looking for capital to fund a certain project I'm working on. And so finding the joint venture partners is obviously an important piece of the puzzle there. So with JVs, there's just so much opportunity and way to grow your business, because I've actually worked with students of ours who have said, well, Steve, I've only got enough money to buy one more property. Well, what do you mean you've only got enough money to buy one more property? They're taking their savings, they're taking their money, whether it's money from their home equity line of credit or their savings or whatever it was, and they're trying to stretch it over 1, 2, 3 properties.
Well, I'm going to go back and say, isn't that what you did when you first started, Steve?
That's exactly what I did when I first. I made that mistake, so I can relate, because back. I was going to say back in the day.
You're old enough to say back in the day.
I've got some gray hair. Back in the day, when I first started, I owned a single family home. I don't have that property anymore. I've sold it. The single family home I was living in had a lot of equity, because for the first 40 years of my life, I say 40 years, not 40 years of my life, I was trying to get out of debt. I was trying to pay off my mortgage. That's what my parents taught me to do. When I met Pip at the age of 40, he taught me to get in all the good debt that I can. So I started getting into good debt. But the first 40 years of my life, I was trying to pay off that mortgage, get out of debt, trying to save my way to retirement. So after working for 10, 20 years, paying off that mortgage, trying to pay that mortgage down, I had some equity in a property. So I got a home equity line of credit, or a HELOC. That HELOC allowed me to free up some of my own money from my own home, and I could use that money for down payments on rental properties. That's how I got started. But over time, that money, you do 1 property, 2 properties, 3 properties, you're buying and selling. I use my HELOC as an ATM, basically. I always had the down payment for my first few properties. But then I had enough for 2 more properties, then 1 more property. And that final last property, I was trying to find the perfect perfect deal. Like, this one wasn't good enough, this one wasn't good enough. And so I was just being too selective, and I passed up some good deals because it was the last deal I could do. What I learned, I started learning about joint ventures, started learning about joint venture partners, how to get them, how to find them, how to structure a deal with a joint venture partner. So I started looking before I was desperate, because I've talked to too many investors who are trying to find money for a deal, trying to find money to close on a property. And if you're trying to do it last minute, or if you're, you can smell the desperation like in the conversation, and that's never good. A desperate real estate investor, that's not what we want to be. So
I think, what's the old adage? You'd rather have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Exactly. So I would suggest start looking for joint venture partners before you need them. Start looking today, just as Bradley in the pharmacy. Hey, I'm a real estate investor. Can we have a conversation? Have you invested in real estate? Would you maybe be interested in investing with a deal with me? You know, what are you looking for in investment? What kind of timelines can you lend your money for? How much money are you looking to lend? Like, all these questions, to start having a conversation about talking to potential joint ventures to see if you guys are a good fit to work together. And that's what I started doing. I started looking for joint venture partners before I needed to, because I could still buy 1 more property, but then I find a joint venture partner just sort of naturally. I got a phone call from a mortgage broker as I was in the golf course. And as on in the golf course, a mortgage broker called me up, had a deal. And the friend I was golfing with, he says, what's that all about? So I've got to find a money partner for a deal I'm working on. So literally we did my first JV deal in a golf cart, just dumb luck. But my friend golfing with me knew I'd been doing property, knew I was leaving my job on property, and wanted a piece of the puzzle. Wanted a piece of the puzzle?
Or a piece of the pie.
Wanted a piece of the pie.
I think
Thank you.
I mean, puzzles don't taste very good, but pie. I like pie. What's your favorite kind of pie,
I could
Bradley?
go for some pie.
What's your favorite kind of pie?
It's a key lime pie.
A key lime pie. Oh my gosh. I think I'm going to have to go with coconut cream. What's your favorite kind of pie?
You know, my mom has always been a baker, and she came over to my place maybe a month ago, and she brought a peach pie.
Peach?
It was pretty spectacular. Like, you know, tasted like childhood, so it was spectacular.
Key lime. You must live in Florida or something.
I do know. It was literally for the pie.
Very cool. You moved to Florida for the key lime pie. Okay, so he wanted a piece of the pie, or that's really why he got into this, because he had seen what you were doing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that brings me to the as I say, the TTP, talk to people. Let people know what you do. I'm a big fan of when you are out there and somebody asks you what you do, as we go back to Bradley being a pharmacist, if he's at a real estate investment meeting, if he is on an airplane, don't lead off with, I'm a pharmacist. What do you do for a living? It's an easy question people ask you. When somebody says, what do you do for a living? Even if you're a pharmacist, a teacher, a preacher, whatever it is that you do, lead off with, I'm a real estate investor. And their questions are going to be different. Their conversation is going to be different than if you let off with, I'm a pharmacist that does real estate on the side. So let people know you're a real estate investor. So that would be a tip from Pip. That'd be like Pip's tip there. Is that right? Or a tipper from the Pipper. We're going to call you. Wait a minute. That's a pretty bad rim shot there. You got. But nonetheless, I think talking to people is so important. And I really think just the fact that you're letting people know that you're a real estate investor and they start to see it, then they believe it. And I think here's a thing that what I look at when I see the JV concept. Who do we go and talk to a lot of times about being a JV partner? People that we know very well. Mm-hmm. And sadly, your family knows what you were like long before you became a successful real estate investor or even a wannabe real estate investor. I mean, your brothers know that you were pretty much whatever you were.
They've known me for a long time, and they still talk to me regardless of that.
I was thinking they already knew you as a joker before they even knew that. But the key is, you may think your family or your friends are going to be your best access to JV money. They are not. Many times and I like to use, and here'll be another tipper from the Pipper. This is the tipper from the Pipper episode. And I think one of the best things that I can think of, and I like to use the movie, and it came out probably before Bradley was out of diapers, Jerry Maguire. What's the tagline from the movie Jerry Maguire?
You had me at hello.
That's not the line I was looking for, but oh man, that's
show me the money.
Show me the money.
Oh, yeah.
I like you had me at hello. I like that line. That's a great line. Yeah,
I like some of the rom-coms.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking if I had you at hello, then Steve, you and I go way back, but that's a whole different podcast. The thing is if I can show somebody the money, there's plenty of money out there. If I'm out there asking for money, don't ask for money. There's a tip right there. Don't ask for money. Nobody wants to give you money. In fact, as soon as you ask people for money, what's the first thing that happens is their butt cheeks squeeze together. It's the second episode in a row I've used the word butt cheeks. In fact, I'm going to make this a goal. Every episode, I want to try to use the word butt cheeks. That would be great. That's the third
twice
time.
in this one.
Should we change the name called the Butt Cheeks?
I think that would get a lot of viewers, probably the wrong audience, though. I don't think that's who we want to get. But I think when we look at it, when you ask people for money, what's the first thing they do is they kind of they clam up and they literally, I was going to say clench, but that's probably not a good word when we started to talk about butt cheeks. But anyway, they literally they don't want to give you their money. But everybody wants to give you their opinion. I guarantee if you ask somebody for their opinion of this deal, so if Steve's talking to the guy on the golf cart, hey, just give him ask him for his opinion of this property deal. Or if you can send somebody an email, if you're talking to them on a phone, whatever you're doing, send them a text. Give me your opinion. And if you're showing them, so here's the kind of the caveat, Steve, that deal that you got your buddy that you were golfing with, what kind of interest were you paying him? Do you remember what the interest you paid him was?
The deal worked because we bought the property, kept the property 3 years. This is a while ago. So kept the property about 3 years.
What do you think you paid him on interest?
It was right around 15% annual interest.
Duh. I mean, if I was standing in front of a group of people right now, I'd say, turn to the person beside you and say, duh. Because if I asked everybody who's listening to this podcast right now, if I could get you a 15% return on your money, you never have to talk to a tenant, you never have to fix a toilet, would you be interested in what I have to say? Oh, and by the way, it's backed by real estate. It's collateralized by property. Are you interested? To me, that's a no-brainer. You've shown him the money. You've shown him the money. If you can show somebody the money, there is plenty of money out there. And so joint venture partners, Steve, I think that's huge. It's most people miss it because they're thinking about, I've got to have the money in the bank. Mm-hmm. Well, as Steve just said, he ran out of money. Eventually, when you're talking properties, and as we speak, I believe the average property in the U.S. is over $400,000 now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's insane. That's a lot of money for a property. And I know in some markets it's only $100,000 or less, but even if it's a $60,000, $80,000 property, that's a lot of money. And if I can show somebody they can get a great return without having to be a landlord, without having to talk to tenants, without having to fix toilets, there's a huge win for them. But Bradley, you do a whole different kind of stuff. You do something where you're not using mortgages or even JV partners. You're doing something called like rent to rent. What does that mean?
Well, when it comes to the concept of other people's money, we want to think of it from the terms of if I've got a good enough deal, I can afford any interest rate. So we don't have to be afraid of paying high interest or giving a partner a great return if we can find really great real estate deals. And my wife and I had done a bunch of short-term rental properties, and but we were running out of down payment money and doing it that traditional way, 20% down. So we started to look at Airbnbs from a different perspective of what if we rent the property? So we rent the property from somebody as a long-term tenant, but then we open the property as an Airbnb or a short-term vacation type of rental. So in this example, let's use some math for you here. So it was $1,800 a month was the rent, but we were making $4,000 a month on Airbnb. So we're making $2,200 per month in cash flow. The expense is $1,800. And to get into a property like that, because we were just a tenant, I didn't need 20% down. In fact, all we needed was first and last month's rent. So to control that property, which talking about a $400,000 home outside of Orlando, right near Disney World in Florida there in Davenport, but we're making a $3,600 deposit at the beginning of the year to then make $2,200 a month. Well, now, how hard is it for me to go find, even if I need the $3,600 to do that deal, I can offer somebody double their money in the next 12 months if I want to, because the deal can afford to pay for it. And I think that's where the concept of how do you find a good JV partner, how do you find money to do deals, it's have good deals. Because if the money can, or if the deal's good enough, then everybody can get paid. And like we always like to say, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. So rent to rent was a great strategy for us.
Obviously, and I mean, obviously we're talking to new investors here. And if you're a new investor, one of the things we have to make sure is we always do things legally. And so did the current landlord, did he know, and I believe I've heard this story, his name is Jay.
That's his name.
And so Jay, did he know that you were renting it and from him, and then you were going to, for lack of a better term, sublet it on an Airbnb situation?
Yeah, and people, it's anytime I tell this story, that's probably one of the first. But what if, or wait a second, hang on, what about this? Did you tell him? Well, of course we told him. In fact, the way we got him to agree to it, because some people even say, well, I'd never do that. Why would I rent it out to somebody else and let them sublet it? Why can't I just put it on Airbnb and do it myself, right? Why didn't Jay do that? Well, Jay didn't think that Airbnb was a great way to do it. He was trying to rent his property with a travel agent.
And what year was this?
This was 2018.
That's an interesting approach.
Do you still use a travel agent on a regular basis?
I use mine every single day right here.
Oh, it's your phone. Okay, yeah.
We're all our own travel agent now, I think.
I gotcha.
But that was Jay's mindset was, it wouldn't work. And we always like to say, whether you think you can or think you can't, either way, you're right. Well, Jay didn't think that the online model would work. He was kind of an old school investor type guy, which, hey, that's fine. But what we look at is we solved his problem. He had a vacant property that he wanted to rent out long term. And he's asking $1,700 a month for this. So what my wife and I did is we actually offered him more than he was asking. So how do I get somebody to say yes? First of all, my legal, of course. He knew exactly what we were doing. We told him how we were going to do it, the fact that there was an insurance policy through Airbnb, everything would be taken care of if there were any issues. But more importantly, that we would be willing to pay him $1,800 a month instead of the $1,700 he was asking for, because we understood he was taking on more risk. But at that point, when we tell Jay that, he's getting more than he even asked for in a Craigslist ad on the computer. So he's excited about that kind of a deal. It's creating those win-win scenarios is how we got him to agree.
Show them the money. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Something cool. If I can just jump in and say one thing, the cool thing is when I met Bradley, it was 2017 or 2018, somewhere in there, and he was doing short-term rentals, and he was already had a short-term rental business up and running when I met him, and I'd really never even heard of short-term rentals before. And here's Bradley basically supporting his lifestyle on short-term rentals. So of course we started talking. I was interested in short-term rentals. I was looking for new strategies, new ways to do that. And but Brad, let me ask you this, because this deal or these deals you do with Jay, because you have more than one, right? The deals with Jay. So you were basically the tenant. You were renting from Jay, and you're re-renting or rent and re-rent on short-term rental, Airbnb, VR, whatever it is. So rental arbitrage or rent and re-rent.
That's a fancy word,
right?
Arbitrage.
So,
yeah.
But you were the tenant. So if that air conditioner broke, what would happen then?
Well, and that's one of the first tenants we actually had in one of Jay's properties, because once we did this first deal, he had other properties. We did a couple more, but interestingly enough, one of the first tenants we had, and this is fall in Florida, so still extremely hot. They show up to the house and the air conditioner is blowing out at full blast, but at 98 degrees. So
is that hot?
I called my land. We could convert that to Celsius for our Canadians out there.
Well, I'm not a
It's
Canadian,
lot.
but that sounds pretty high.
Sounds warmer than we prefer.
A lot.
Okay.
So yeah, but basically, I call up my landlord Jay and say, "Hey, this is an issue. He's got to pay to get that air conditioner repaired." And in fact, he actually had to host the guest in another one of his properties that night, because that's his he's got to provide a safe place to stay as a landlord. So he ate those costs, and that was nice with the rent to rent is it limits our exposure as well. We want to make great returns, but the less risk that we have is also something that we look for. And in that rent to rent setting, we don't have a lot of risk. So
that's truly an aha moment, because you actually are using other people's money, other people's credit in that instance, and you actually have less risk than using your own money and your own credit. Think about that. That's an odd concept, because I think most people would think, oh, there's going to be a lot more risk if I'm doing that. Actually, there's less risk at the end of the day.
Well, I know, and Sam's not here with us today right now, but Sam would always have to tell everybody, the more you share the wealth, the more people you get in the deal, that just means you're at risk less. So the more leverage we use, the less risk we're actually going to have.
Crazy to think about that. But that's really the case. And as we look at OPM, it's such a big topic, and we're not going to get through all of it on this podcast, unless this would be a 4-hour podcast. It'd be kind of like that trip that I said was a 3-hour tour that Gilligan took. But either way, did you guys pack for the 3-hour tour? I didn't pack for it.
I'm ready.
Yeah, lots of outfits. We need that, because obviously some of the castaways had that.
I'll bring snacks.
I bet you will, but they're going to get kind of wet if we go underwater. Anyway, it doesn't matter. When we look at this, Steve was talking about joint venture partners, and I look at a joint venture partner as an individual who maybe really it doesn't have a business of lending money. They just have some capital that they want to lend. There's a whole bunch more ways of doing it, and one of them is called private money and or hard money. And I don't know if you guys have any comments on private or hard money, but private money is somebody who really has set up to be a private money lender on a deal. And they have a business set up. They probably already have contracts that they're going to do. But private money is a great way for you to get access to capital. Steve, Bradley, any places people could go and find private money that you can think of?
I know we got access to a lot of different private money lenders by going to our local community meetups. So we would go to real estate meetups around town in Florida, and so we live in Southeast Florida in Delray Beach, but we would go to the Fort Lauderdale. It's called a RIA, Real Estate Investors Association. We would go to one in Boynton Beach, a little north of us, and just talk to people, kind of like Steve has mentioned. You're just networking, telling everybody what you do. But we were able to meet private money investors that they were investors themselves, but they saw the value in. They just use their knowledge. So they're going to lend you money at a high interest rate, knowing that if something goes wrong, they can just go do the deal. And their plan B is doing the actual work. But their plan A is you do all the work, they get a nice return. So we were able to meet a lot of private money people through that community type of real estate investor meeting.
You know what I've noticed? When Bradley talks about these cities, they say beach at the end of that.
There's a reason for that.
Where I live, there's no towns with beach at the end of it. How about you, Steve? Is there any towns where you live that have beach at the end?
No.
I think we're in the wrong place. I really do. And so any comments on private money that you want to add to that, Steve? Because I think it's a big topic. We could spend hours on that.
I agree 100% with Bradley. My best resource has been the meetups or the RIAs. And what does a RIA mean again before I get too far into that?
Real Estate Investment Association. You can Google local RIAs. You could call them, sometimes they're called real estate investment clubs. Just Google wherever city you're at, Delray Beach or Kansas City or Sarnia, Ontario, and just Google real estate meetups, real estate investment clubs, real estate investment associations, whatever word you want to use, and then whatever city you want to do this in, and you will probably find lots of things that come up on Google. Good old Google. How did we ever find things out before Google?
The Google. Another
Yes.
source, I was just saying, the meetups or the RIAs are great. That's been my best resource by far. Another resource is mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
Talking to mortgage brokers, networking with mortgage brokers. They're in the business 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. This is what they do. They usually, they should, if it's a mortgage broker I'm working with, they're going to have access to private money, lenders, hard money, as Pip talked about. So I've used mortgage brokers to lend money. I've used mortgage brokers to borrow money. So they're a great resource. So add them to your contact list, your Rolodex, as Pip and I know what a Rolodex is. Bradley, do you know what a Rolodex is?
I think I saw one in a museum one time.
Right. I remember Rolodex, but some of you guys listening might not know a Rolodex, but mortgage brokers are a great resource. So we'll be talking about mortgage brokers a lot during our podcasts as we move forwards, but they're a great resource for that.
My Rolodex is right by my fax machine, which is next to my tape recorder.
And your stone chiseled tablet for making notes. Yep.
So, and so I've heard Steve say it. I know I said it a couple times. Is the word hard money versus private money. Hard money is its own thing out there, and best place to find hard money is from mortgage brokers. And what I want you to think about, what is the difference between hard money and some of these other things that we talk about? With hard money, they are not going to ask you for your credit score. They won't ask you for job verification, income verification. And I think people go, really? There's companies out there that do that? And the answer is yeah. They're lending on the hard asset. See, I thought when I first started this, and I know Steve's the same way, when we first started this, we thought it was called hard money because it was hard to get. It's not because it's hard to get, it's because it's based on the hard asset. And that's why they're not checking your credit score. That's not what they're looking at, your job income or anything like that. But with hard money, what we have to think about, really what is it? And some of you guys are, I guarantee when I say you don't have to worry, they don't check your credit, they're not checking your income, they're not looking at your job verification. Some of you guys are going, oh, it sounds too good to be true. There's got to be a catch. And mom has said, if it sounds too good to be true, then obviously it's too good to be true. Why aren't most people wealthy? It's a very, very simple question, but most people don't understand. Why are most people not wealthy? It's because of your mama. It's because of your daddy, because they don't know how to do this. And who do we get most of our information from? You heard Bradley talking about this on the last episode, talking to his mom and dad. Bradley, what does your dad do for a living?
He manages a local community bank.
So just a small bank that he manages.
Yep.
Has he gone out and bought a bunch of properties in a short period of time?
Nope.
So Bradley, what does your mom do for a living?
She's a mom.
She's a mom.
Now a grandmom.
Toughest job in the world being a mom. The best job in the world I've heard is being a grandma. But I don't think Steve and you and I will ever be grandmas. I highly doubt it. Steve, what does your mom do for a living?
Helps my dad.
And what's your dad do?
They're small business owners. My dad has owned the same small business back home for over 60 years. And my mom helps him in the family business.
And so your dad is in his 80s and he still works every day?
Yep, that's what he does.
That's just what he does. Now, that's interesting. Now, I love my parents. Both of my parents have passed on. They owned a small business and they worked together in that small business. But if you're trying to get an answer from somebody who's never done it, I mean, think about that. If you've never done something, how can you teach somebody else how to do it? I mean, if I said, if I want to learn how to fly a plane, Bradley, you know how to fly a plane?
I do not.
Neither do I. Let me show you. I'm going to kill him is what I'm going to do. We're both going to be dead. Why? Because I don't know how to fly a plane. He doesn't know how to fly a plane. Why would he ask me? So why would you ask your mom or your dad if they've never bought a bunch of properties in a short period of time? Why would you ask them how to get money to do property? We get our information from the wrong place. And who do you listen to? If you're listening to other middle-class broke people, guess what you're going to get? Middle-class broke answers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to talk to a bunch of pharmacists, you're going to get a bunch of pharmacist answers. You know a lot about...
You do not want to talk to a bunch of pharmacists.
I don't want to talk to a bunch. I can't even explain how I would not want to talk. I can't even speak that language.
You wouldn't want to. We just use a lot of syllables.
I just don't. I don't understand that world. But the key is we need to get the right people who we're getting the information from. And technically, hard money, very simple concept, but very misunderstood because. And here's what I've noticed. I made the comment, and Steve, you'd know this too, is that when you want to get hard money, when you want to get private money, and you ask a mortgage broker for it, If your mortgage broker starts doing this, and he'll be another tip from Pip, there we go. And you guys love the tips from Pip. I know, it's fun. But when you're talking to a mortgage broker and you start asking them about private money and hard money, and they immediately go to, oh, you don't want that because the interest rate's high. I get why the mortgage broker's upset, because they get beat up all the time over the cost of interest. And private money's going to be higher. Hard money's going to be higher. There's not a catch when it comes to these concepts. There's a cost. You're going to pay a higher interest rate. But Kiyosaki taught me this when I learned from him years ago. It's not the cost of the capital that's important, it's the availability of it. And if we have access to capital, we can do more deals. If you have no access to capital, you can't do any more deals. You're done. Steve said that earlier. So all of these concepts are just expanding our mind. And we haven't even got into credit cards. And
See, I've got a much older, slightly wiser business partner. He always says to me, or always says, it's a great saying, and Bradley knows where I'm going. He says, how much money you made on the deals you haven't done? And you say the money's too expensive, the interest is too expensive, so find a way to get the money, get the deal done. And Bradley, there's another saying, I think you kind of know where I'm going with this one, right? 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Again, from my much older, slightly wiser business partner. But these are things like, hey, if the cost of the capital is high, do the numbers make sense? If the numbers make sense, whether you're paying 10% interest, 12%, even 15%, I've paid that all day long. Let's start talking credit cards. What about credit card interest? If the numbers make sense, you do it. Because as Pip was saying a few minutes ago there, I've been given all kinds of free advice from people who have never invested in property before. On my very first deal, I remember giving all kinds of unsolicited advice about what a bad deal it was or how risky it was or maybe I shouldn't do this. On my second deal, I was given all kinds of free advice that I maybe shouldn't do real estate. When I was taking classes, I was given all kinds of free advice. Not a good idea, but what did I do? I just kept doing it. I kept investing in property, kept buying property, kept getting more education, kept getting more training. And at the end of the day, so now what happened? The people who gave me all that free advice still have not invested in real estate, and I've gone on. That was 13 years ago, 12 and 13 years ago. It's amazing. As Pip says, it's who you listen to, who you get your advice from, and ultimately taking action. You got to take action and do it.
Well, and Kiyosaki, I think, is where I heard this quote. The most expensive advice he ever got was free advice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of know-it-alls out there. I don't know a lot. I do know enough to keep my mouth shut and listen twice as much as I talk. But all of these things that I spout out there, I've learned from somebody else. And you find people who are doing exactly what you want to do, and you just follow their path. And that is not a hard concept, is to follow somebody who's done exactly what you want to do. If you want to learn how to be an NFL quarterback, I am not the guy to ask, guaranteed. I know a little bit about football, played a little football in my life, but I don't know how to navigate the NFL, or I can't even spell NFL. That's what I know about the NFL. And so the point is really very basic. Find people who are doing exactly what you want, people who've been there, done that, and they can help you get to that next step. Do it a step at a time. Any closing remarks on OPM in any way, shape, or form, Mr. Bradley Strack?
Well, I think just in having a little fun with that, it's Steve said that, you know, a lot of people would give him unsolicited advice in the beginning, and I remember that as well. What do you mean you're going to do this property stuff and real estate, and how are you going to fund that? How are you going to find OPM? And it never, my help never came from those people. And but the unsolicited advice does slow down or go away once you just keep cashing checks. I did find. Yeah. Then they stop asking questions when you have them come down and visit you in Florida and things like that.
Well, I think people will always not believe what you say, but it's hard for them not to believe what they see that you do. Hard to believe that. Hard to not believe that. Steve, any closing remarks on OPM for right now? I'm going to go with nothing.
Yeah.
He just, I just threw it to Steve, and he's like,
all the pure gold's been given.
Less is more.
Yeah, less is more. Well, that's true. And so what I want you guys to do is tune into our next episode where we will discuss starting to build your network, starting with your power team. As you begin to learn more, more about who you'll need on your power team and things like that, and who you'll need in your business. We talked today about other people's money. So on our next episode, we're going to talk about OPT, other people's time. We will look at who you will have on your team and how you have that community and support to get the deals done. But before we get out of here, I just want to say again, if you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you do that on. For more information on investing, go to our website at pipspath.com. You can follow us on social media at PipsPath to Property and Cash Flow Joe Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Are we not on TikTok? I don't know.
Sure.
Are we on TikTok? I have no idea how that all works. Leave us a comment, give us a follow, and we will see you on the path.
Big TikTok guy you are.
That I am. See you on the path.